Hi there, I'm Stacy Gold. I am an adventure sports athlete and adventure romance author based here in Boulder, Colorado. And I am both thrilled and honored to be featured on the Boulder Bookstore Author Q&A series. And I'm here today to talk about my latest release, a steamy adventure romance novel called Wild at Heart. I'm very excited about this. This is my first full-length release. Can't wait to tell you a little more about it. And the first question the Boulder Bookstore is asking me is, can I share a little synopsis of the story? Absolutely. This book is a modern day flip on your usual damsel in distress romance novel. And it's about our heroine, Jules Martinez, who is an overworked entrepreneur, and she's also tired of having every guy she dates dump her for their ex-girlfriend. An avid outdoors woman, she decides she needs a serious reset that includes a year-long vow of celibacy, starting with 5 blissful weeks backpacking her favorite stretches of the Pacific Crest Trail in Washington solo. Our hero, Evan Davenport, is pretty much her polar opposite. He's not an outdoors person at all, but he's at a point in his life where he's lost his job, he's broken up with his fiance, he's realized he's deeply unhappy. And since the last time he remembers being happy was camping with scouts as a kid, he decides to go in search of joy and purpose in life by doing a week-long speed hike of one section of the PCT. So he buys all the latest gear, hops a flight to Seattle, and hits the trail. And of course, he's also out there solo. But Mother Nature has other ideas and keeps throwing Jules and Evan in each other's paths, usually naked, which is a whole lot of fun. And when sparks start flying between them, they have to decide whether they're going to be able to find what they're looking for in life alone, or whether it would be get better together. So it's a really fun book that takes on some different ideas, tropes, and aspects that you don't always see in the romance genre. So next question, what inspired me to write this book? Well, people always say, write the book you want to read but can't find, and that would definitely be this book. I have been working, playing, and oftentimes living in the outdoors since my late teens. I got my first job as a whitewater raft guide when I was 18 years old. Despite folks telling me I would never be able to be a guide, I wasn't strong enough, I wasn't big enough. I was clearly worried about getting my hair wet or breaking my nails, and I should just go back to the shopping mall. Needless to say, that made me determined to be a raft guide. And that eventually led me to whitewater kayaking and moving out west to finish my degree. And then I started working for the Forest Service as a backcountry ranger and a river ranger. But throughout it all, especially in my 20s, I had no other women as role models who were doing similar things. And I had a lot of naysayers, people who not only thought I couldn't do it, but thought it was inappropriate for me to be doing all these outdoor sports and jobs, and that certainly I would never be able to find a man and land a husband because I'd be far too intimidating. And I just, obviously that's not true. I've been happily married almost 24 years now to someone I met whitewater kayaking. And I just wanted to write something that was what I wanted to read, what I would have loved to have read when I was younger. And also the kind of book that would appeal to other women, whether they're outdoorsy or not, who are really tired of seeing some guy come to the woman's rescue in pretty much every romance novel. And I've been lucky in that a lot of men and a lot of folks who aren't outdoorsy at all have been finding the book and really loving it. So, did I do any hiking to prepare for writing this book? Well, yes and no. I lived in Seattle for about 15 years. So during that time, I hiked and or backpacked just about every mile of trail that Jules hikes in the book. But at the time, I didn't know that I would ever write a backpacking romance or use that knowledge for anything other than just to go backpacking again and have a great time out there. So, I did do a lot of hiking, but it wasn't necessarily in preparation for this book, but I'm sure glad I had that background and experience going in. So next question, when writing a romance novel, do I come up with the characters first and figure out how to throw them together? Or do I decide first the kind of romance I want to write and then create characters to fit into the scenario? And really, for me, it all kind of happens at the same time. I typically come up with an idea for a book, the characters that I want to have in the book, the first scene of how they're going to meet each other, which is called the meet cute in the romance genre. I have a pretty good idea of what the arc of it is going to be before I ever even get started. So it all kind of comes together at the same time in my head and just sort of shoots out somewhat fully formed for what it is, which really isn't much compared to an actual novel and how big that is. Next question is, can I talk a little bit about my writing process? Absolutely. So once I have this idea for a story and the characters, and I usually have a pretty good idea of what their big issues and fears are and what holds them back from loving themselves, from letting someone else love them, from being able to fully love another person. And once I have that, and I have this basic story idea, I typically will write about a 3 to 5 paragraph synopsis. I don't think any of them have ever gone longer than half page. And they usually include that meet cute, the major turning points in the book and how it's going to end, along with a little bit of the arc the characters are going to have to journey along to get to their happily ever after or happily for now. And then once I've done that, I put a ton of time into understanding my characters and figuring out who they are. So I have about a 60-something question Excel spreadsheet that I run through for every one of my main characters. And I do a little bit shorter version for my secondary characters and my tertiary characters. But it lets me detail everything from how they look to if they have any specific mannerisms, how they speak, what their background is like, their family, their education, what are their biggest fears, what do they love the most, all kinds of details. So that by the time I'm done doing this, my characters are basically like real people living in my head. And occasionally some of these details will change as I write the book, but I can keep track of those in these spreadsheets as well. So not only do they really let me get to know my characters, but they keep me from screwing up details later on. And since I write very character-driven stories, once I know who my characters are, it's really easy to drop them into settings and scenarios that I know will be difficult for them. And then I just have to let it play out as though they were real people reacting to the same things in real life. So at that point, I'm what they call a pantser in the writing world as opposed to a plotter. I've tried to plot, it doesn't work. I just have these big details, these big waypoints I know I want to hit, and then I start writing. Once the first draft is done, usually a couple rounds of edits, and it's ready to start going out to beta readers. I do a few more changes, and then it goes to my editors and proofreaders and gets ready to be published. So next question for me is, what have I been reading during the pandemic to stay hopeful? Well, that's the beauty of being a romance author and a romance reader is I've been reading romance because I know that it's always going to have a happy ending. So it's never going to bring me angst or bring me down too far. Any books in the romance genre that are particularly dark or deal with any really difficult topics usually have content warnings, trigger warnings. So you know what you're getting into. But I read a lot of rom-coms. I read some historicals. Throughout my life, I've read a little of everything, but really the crazier the world gets, the more I just want to know that the book is going to be happy. And romance is great for that. And there's so many new books coming out all the time by all kinds of different authors these days. So there's a lot of variety in terms of the characters being represented. And I just love it because I think one of the best things about reading is that you get to get in somebody else's head for a while who might be really different from you and go places you wouldn't normally go. And romance has everything within the genre that you could ever possibly want. So yeah, that's pretty much it for me. And I highly recommend it if you're looking for something uplifting. Grab a romance novel. Is there anything else that I want you to know about this book? Well, yeah, it is first and foremost a romance novel. It is a steamy romance. So if you don't like sex on the page, you'll either want to skip those parts or read somebody else's work. And it's definitely different from a lot of what's out there. And that's what a lot of reviewers are saying. In particular, many people find the fact that I don't have a guy coming to the rescue of some damsel in distress really refreshing. They're happy to see a guy who's willing to be a little more sensitive, who's willing to set his ego aside and recognize that this woman knows more than he does about certain things and that he can listen and learn from her. And in fact, it's her independence and her competence and her strength that's a big part of what he finds so attractive. So that's really different. And then also because my degree is in environmental education and resource management, and I studied a lot of nature writing in school and have utilized that in my work, there's definitely a little piece of that that infuses itself into my romance novels as well. And so a lot of reviewers have also mentioned that they really felt like they were on the trail hiking with these people, that they could feel the cold rain on their skin or the hot sun on their backs and the sweat dripping down their spine. I had one woman say her new favorite sport is backpacking from her couch. So I think it's a really great armchair adventure for just about anybody. And yeah, you don't get a lot of romance novels set in the outdoors, and particularly not ones that are written from a really authentic point of view. So that definitely makes this a little bit different, and I think a lot of fun. So the final thing that the Boulder Bookstore asks of me is, could I read a passage from my book? And the answer is, of course, I would love to. I'm going to start you out with the opening scene in chapter 1. This is written in Jules' point of view. As she's getting ready to start her big journey on the Pacific Crest Trail. I'm so jealous, Jules. Bryn perched on the end of one of the beds in our hotel room at Cascade Locks, watching me pack gear. The thin gray light of pre-dawn filtered through a crack in gold curtains that had seen better days. I tucked a bag of snacks in my rain jacket into the top of my backpack, cinched the draw cord, and buckled the lid with a solid click. Of what? 12 guys dumping me for their exes in a row? I'm sure we could arrange that for you too, if you ever really started dating again. Ha, funny. She towed my calf. You're taking 5 weeks off to go backpacking solo. Who cares why? Tingles of excitement zoomed around in my chest, and I flashed her a grin. Yeah, dealing with 0 assholes and 0 clients for more than a month does sound pretty heavenly, doesn't it? She grinned back. Like I said, totally jealous, at least of your trip. Her expression fell serious. I still can't believe the next guy you date is going to be unlucky number 13, though. Yeah, I've thought about that. Probably too much. Definitely enough to jinx the next one for sure. So I'm swearing off men for at least a year to restart the count. I hesitated, the excitement buzz fading. A year is enough time to consider it a clean dating slate, right? Wait, you mean you're swearing off dating or swearing off sex too? Yes, both, all of it. The last 8 years had been nothing but suckage on the relationship front. It'd probably take more than a year to fix my shit, but nothing would change if I didn't change something. Bryn's eyes widened. You're serious? Dead. Bending, I tugged the rough nylon laces of my left boot. The well-worn leather snugged around my foot. I'm never going to figure out anything buried in too much work plus too many bad dates. When did you decide this? Last night. I shouldered my pack and adjusted the straps until the familiar weight settled on the tops of my hip bones. What I've been doing isn't working. It's time to take a big step back and focus on myself for longer than just a few weeks. I guess that's one way to break the pattern. Bryn opened the door and we stepped out into the early morning stillness. And yes, a year is definitely long enough to clean your dating slate. Fog tendrils drifted from the Columbia River across the half-empty parking lot. The air hung thick with moisture and cedar and the sweet mustiness of damp soil. The best smell in the world after too many days breathing city fumes. I sure as hell hope so. If not, at least maybe I can figure out what to do about my business. I can't keep working this much. We strolled side by side across the lot, the chill air nipping my skin through my nylon hiking pants and shirt, waking me up. The sky glowed marigold behind the inky silhouettes of the mountains. You'll come up with a plan. You always do. Thanks for the vote of confidence. We crossed the empty highway, walked a few hundred yards and turned off. Gravel crunched under our soles. And thanks for driving me down here from Seattle and picking me up at the other end. Of course, that's what best friends are for. She wrapped a hand around my arm and leaned in, hugging one of my few body parts not covered by my backpack. Though I still wish I was going with you. I could use a break from assholes and clients too. The first golden rays of sunlight slanted through the tree branches, lighting the dirt road ahead. We'll have to plan a girlfriend's trip once I get back. I'm holding you to that. Her warm hand tightened on my biceps. Maybe we can convince Allie to come with us for once. I snorted. We'll get Allie on a backpacking trip when pigs fly, but I'm all for trying. Well, that's a short sample of the beginning of Wild at Heart. If you'd like to keep reading, of course, you can grab a copy at Boulder Bookstore or order it anywhere books are sold. If you'd like to learn more about me, my adventures, or my other books, please visit www.stacygold.com. Thank you so much for popping in and happy reading.